with that, we have three wonderful recruiters from three different wonderful organizations. We have Olga Alton. You want to stand up and come along? I feel like I should be, on a talk show. We've got a wonderful show tonight. Here's Olga, and we need a band to play you. I'll give you that. You want to give a quick spiel of who you are and what you do before we get into this?
Hi, it's working. Hi, my name is Olga. I'm a recruiter currently at Bowers & Wilkins. You've heard of our company. We make the greatest speakers in the world. I've previously worked at companies like Nimble Storage, 24/7 AI, SanDisk, and before that I spent 16 years as an executive recruiter. I started off my career as a corporate recruiter because of that man who gave me my first job. Thank you very much. And that's who I am.
Nepotism, it works. That's a small community, that's what I meant. The second is, no, not you.
What the hell? I was all ready.
No. Blazers go last. Pramod Chintry, who I had counted like maybe a decade or more ago, and we reconnected in the last couple of years. Why don't you talk about the thing you least want to talk about yourself for a moment?
All right. Hey guys, thanks for inviting me back up. I did good last time, I guess. I typically work for startups, like most of us recruiters, a lot of consultings. I've worked across the valley, different companies, but right now I'm in the health tech space. So I don't know, anyone here in the health space? Health tech, I should say. Great. Anyone want to be in the health tech space? Oh, good. All right. Well, that's who I am. Looking forward to you. So.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And last and certainly not least, our wonderful friend Tom from Samantha.
Hey folks, my name is Tom. I currently am the person who is the single throat to choke for talent acquisition at Symantec for their consumer division. So I get to hire all the really cool software engineers that are developing security technology to protect your home, your life. So we own the Norton product line. We also own LifeLock, so cool stuff. Previously worked with Olga at SanDisk. I've also did the EMC and I also worked at Visa. We are hiring at Symantec, so everybody have a LinkedIn app on their phone? Raise your phone up. You have a LinkedIn app on your phone? Okay. Okay. Open it up. LinkedIn. Okay.
Are you adding to your network right now?
Dude,
That's what's
just
happening.
quiet. Tom, last name Brichoud, B as in Bob, R-O-U-C-H-O-U-D. If you are interested in a job or interested in applying to Symantec, I will personally make sure your information gets in front of the right person. That's right. All right. So Tom Brichoud, B-R-O-U-C-H-O-U-D. Thank you, and good night. Oh, no.
And that's how he's going to hit his quota this quarter. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So reminder again, if you've got questions, you can send them as direct messages to @SVPMA, but you gotta follow us in order to be able to do that. So that's the devil's bargain. So while people are firing up things they're interested in, let's talk about some of the things I think will interest many. I'm sorry you've only got 2 microphones, so you have to share. I'm just curious for a quick temperature sense. We're now at ridiculously low unemployment. The economy's humming along. Everything's going up into the right. Talk to me a little bit about what this looks like from your perspective as people hiring. The demand for talent, the ability to find talent. What's it look like over the last year or so that's changed? So random. We'll start with Olga. She looks eager.
So the toughest challenge for me recruiting today, and the first question I get from candidates is, how often can I work from home because the commute stinks? Like, commute has become such a huge issue for people's. So what's already challenging in recruiting, finding, being able to have budget, all that kind of stuff, has an added layer of horribleness with the traffic in Silicon Valley today.
I'm just curious, maybe a quick poll of the audience. Half-hour commute, hands up. Okay. Hour commute. More than an hour commute? Okay, so, dwindling. Willing to work for more than an hour commute? Okay, good talk. Tom, Pramod, other thoughts on that?
My comment is that less responses to my outreach, right? As a matter of fact, I got this first email from LinkedIn saying that I would be banned from bulk emails because I didn't hit the right threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a 13% response threshold. So, anyways, putting that aside, definitely less response. I mean, everyone's employees, everyone I'm reaching out to. So, just having something compelling.
I want to piggyback off of what you just said because I think that's a very, very interesting message. Is we're really trying to build a compelling story, right? There's a lot of things that go on in the industry, a lot of things that go on in companies, and you want to be able to share with the candidate pool, with the people that are interested in your opportunities, what is compelling, what is a pull for them to come talk to us, or talk to the company you're working for. And one of the things I've noticed is just because the unemployment rate is so low right now doesn't mean that people are happy in their current roles. It just means they're employed, right? So what we try to do is really be proactive in our outreach and talk to people and meet them where they are as opposed to where we want them to be. And when I say that, what I mean is, hey, let's talk about what you're interested in. Let's talk about your career goals. Let's talk about, okay, you've been as a senior product manager for the past 6 years. Talk to me about your aspirations to be in management. And so it's not necessarily looking for people at that level, but it's looking where do people want to go and then helping to either design or communicate a path that people can get to where they need to go. If it doesn't exist, we don't share it. I mean, this is not bait and switch. It's more about helping people to understand what we have to offer. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. The days of just posting a job and waiting for the resumes to roll in and cycling them left and right, those are not here right now. We're not doing that right now. We're really doing deep dives in every single position to find people and help them understand why we'd be a great place for them to join.
So a quick comment, as far as, recruiters, we get so many emails allocated, and as job seekers, even though you might not be interested in the role, you'd be doing your recruiter friend who reached out to you a big favor by responding back and just saying, hey, sorry, I don't know you, because that way we don't get dinged by LinkedIn. And so the thing is that, ideally you'd have time to really look at someone's background and say, this is why we're interested in you. So when I'm doing sourcing on LinkedIn, I send a list to my hiring manager and I said, pick out 3 things on this candidate's background, what you like, and I say, hey, my hiring manager reviewed your background, he likes this and this and this and this. That takes so much time, even when you have a lot of open recs. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But just responding back, thank you, I looked it over, if it were ABC this, I'd probably be interested. At least I get the credit back and then I don't get dinged. Right, they're here to get the inner scoop, right? So that's something that you do. It's a big favor to recruiters and we appreciate it. We don't get dinged and then LinkedIn doesn't ding us. And yeah, I'm not allowed to invite anybody to my network anymore because apparently...
You've hit the limit?
No, because apparently it's too many declined. I'm like, wait a minute. I usually don't invite people who are standing right in front of me.
Well, there's another reason beyond just the obvious, be kind. One of the super secrets I learned from someone recently is, even if you're not interested in that particular role at that company, responding to the in-mail, right? Obviously, it keeps that relationship open with that individual, but in a lot of cases, those recruiters, they're actually working on a corporate recruitment account. And so even if that individual recruiter moves on, you can still in-mail. No, it's not even about being connected to them. It's literally the fact that you had that exchange and responded. It's the seed. And so if...
Go back to the next recruiter.
Yeah, that's right. So if you later on go, oh, I saw this super awesome job at that company, who do I know I have a connection? Oh, this recruiter reached out to me in the past. You can respond back to that in-mail.
It'll go into the new recruiter's mailbox. Yes, someone just gave up another good secret. Yeah, and so Tom, I actually one time was showing him, when I got to Sandus, I got in trouble right away for using all the in-mail. And I was like, but look, because no one noticed that I got the type of account that I could see what everyone else was doing, so I pulled all the metrics, and I'm like, nobody else is using their stuff, so why can't I use it?
I couldn't argue with that. It's great.
Because we only had a few seats, and then, and I showed him a few other secrets about what the data, the metrics behind what recruiters are doing, the email response. It's, yes, please respond. Do your recruiting friends a favor, respond.
So I'm curious on that. It sounds like, hey, life is hard to find good talent, harder now than it is. Flipping it the other way, I've certainly talked to a number of people who are talented product management individuals, and I've actually heard a fairly consistent story about, and of course we all know, it's difficult to get hired, it's difficult to make it all the way through, but more often than not, it seems these days not being able to get through the whole process. And I'm curious, is that imagination on their part? Is that reflective of some change from your perspective or the hiring manager?
As like the interview, so it depends what your company and what the team's like almost. At my company, we make the hiring managers do a lot of the homework up front with the candidate. So if you're bringing someone in, they better be good, and you bring in the frequency, and there's a talking to.
Oh, Pramod, are you dressing down any of your hiring managers?
There's a talking to. So you're bringing a lot of people in, and they're not getting hired, so you're not doing your homework as a hiring manager and making sure that this is a good hire. So when we bring people in now, they'll go through a progression of levels with the VP being the last one to interview, and if at any point the team decides and everyone's putting their feedback in immediately, the interviews take a little bit longer, but you're passing along to the next person. Okay, so touch up here, and I was worried about this, asking about this, and it's progressing along, and all the notes kind of accumulating. And if you reach to the VP, then there should be an offer at the end. But someone raises red flags somewhere between the process, then it stops, and I get called in, and we have a chat, and I try to move everything over. I don't want to waste your time all day, 5, 6 hours with interviews if we know it's not going to go anywhere. So very, very nicely sit down, give you some coaching on LinkedIn, help you with your resume, show you on your way.
Huh. Okay, interesting.
But you know what? For the most part, when I first started doing this at a company, it was nerve-wracking as a recruiter because, I had probably the second person start crying, but she was interviewing for I don't know, kind of the person who actually set this whole thing in place, brought this very junior candidate, and then she ended up crying, and I could have killed him for it.
Was that harsh on her, or?
Because she was very junior.
Okay.
She was very junior. And they were following the process that just been said, and then I had to break the news, and she started crying, and but that was the only bad. Everyone else has been very appreciative and open and understanding, and as long as they understand the commitment of our processes and that it's to save them time and it's not going to lead to anything, we're not going to keep dragging you back and have multiple rounds. We're going to be done at the end of the day. If you make it, you'll know within 24 hours you'll have an offer in your inbox.
Tom, have you seen any change in sort of how recruiters handle bringing people in? If there's things being drawn out longer, or is it just in people's imagination that it's getting harder to get through the process?
It's not the imagination. So in the interviewing process, there are a lot of touch points, right? There's the initial touch point where you go in and you engage with the company for the very first time, or the company engages with you. There's a drop off at that point. Then you go into the phone interview, and then you're engaging with them a second time, and you're talking to them about, maybe it's a technical phone interview, or maybe it's talking about just basic salary expectations, whatever that second touch point is. There's a drop off at that point. As we go through the funnel, as we go through from that first touch point all the way through to the offer touch point, the drop off is significant, right? You really do have a high level of competition the further along you go, because now you're bringing the 3 best candidates in for your second round interviews. You're bringing your 2 best candidates in for your final interviews, and the competition just gets harder and harder and harder. Right now, what I'm finding is that the competition for those final 2 spots is huge, and either one of the people or even one of the 3 people could do the job, right? So we're not talking about 2 finalists that one's really good and one's a stretch. We're talking about 2 finalists from top companies, from top MBA or master's programs that are fighting it out, and they're not even necessarily interested in the job once we offer it, because they're super passive.
Now, I'm curious about this because I've talked to a number of individuals who've been, well, the economy's going so well, the unemployment's so low, therefore, I'm a catch, right? And my theory is actually it's the inverse of what people think it is. If the economy were bad, most people who were potentially talented would be hunkered down, staying where they are rather than taking the risk. And when the economy is good, actually a whole lot of talent might actually free up.
Migrating,
Yeah,
migrating.
because it's less of a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is very competitive right now for a lot of these jobs, and it makes it just more difficult. Now, that doesn't mean that it's impossible or that it's bad. It just means that we need to have more touch points, right? We need to, as candidates, we need to be engaging with more companies early on. We need to be networking. We need to be reaching out to our networks. And when I say networking and reaching out to our networks, those are 2 different activities. Networking is this. Reaching out to our networks are the people that who you've worked with in the past. You say, hey, I'm looking for my next great adventure. Can you put in a good word for me at whatever company you're at, unless it's Facebook, don't go there. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Okay.
They're not sponsored.
Sorry, but no.
They're not sponsored, but so I
Talk about a long interview process. So we used to work with someone who's executive recruiter at Facebook. There's tears all the time because their interview process is 4 rounds, 4 people, and they all have to agree that you're going to get hired. And then she's got a quota, and then she's going to meet diversity. And if she doesn't meet diversity, she gets 2 points. She's back at 0. And wow.
Okay, this sounds like almost like salesperson role. You have a quota, you've got a bag to carry, and that kind of approach. Maybe twisting a little bit. So everything's changing, everything's moving faster. We're only from a year ago from the last time we had this conversation. So what has been the pivot in what people are looking for? What has suddenly faded into the background that we thought was important wasn't, and what's sort of coming forward amongst the things that people are asking for in their hiring criteria? Maybe Pramod, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I live in the whole startup world. So. We don't have a lot of touch points. I mean, I do the initial phone screen and determine whether we're going to push this thing forward, and we move pretty quick. So I've got the interview process dialed in right from the beginning, and we can make an offer within 48 hours. I mean, phone screen, on-site, and so forth. I do notice, though, that definitely seeing people that want to go the startup world, number one. It is a lot about the team, right? It's about the culture that I'm starting to hear more and more about. And so clearly that's something that we've got to put as a priority, right? Making sure that we've got a good culture, that Glassdoor is up to speed, right? That we've got the reviews going on there, and encouraging candidates to submit their reviews after interviews if it's positive, right?
So going back to Facebook, I think there was an article I saw maybe in the last week or so, heralding that Google and Facebook and others will no longer really care if you have a college degree or not. So I'm curious how much is that actually true more generally? Certainly I know some people get concerned about, well, I have a degree, but I don't have the right degree from the right school. Is that still a problem? And if so, how do you overcome that?
I'm not sure about these guys, but I mean, in our case, all of our engineering folks and professionals we're hiring at this point that are traditional experience, right? And so the education piece plays a pretty small scenario. I mean, you know, you want them to be educated, but it's really about the professional experience that really is. So.
Yeah, for us, it's about having the right level of experience, right type of experience. And I'm actually going to touch on something that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, and that was mentioned by my colleagues here. Culture is becoming more and more important. But really, I think the most important thing about culture is from the candidate's perspective. So as candidates are evaluating companies that they want to work for, really figure out if this is going to be the right culture for you. There are some companies, to Olga's point earlier, I'm not sure about your company, but just companies out there, they have this policy, or not policy usually, but it's a kind of unwritten rule. If you're not here, you're not working, right? There's some companies out there like that. Other companies have a much more open, we're more concerned about the results, right? I'm more concerned about people coming in and when they need to, but if you need to work from home, work from home. You don't have to ask special permission or go through any extraneous steps to do so. And there are companies out there that are somewhere in between. There are companies out there that are really far away but are worth driving to, or really close and not worth going to, right? So you have to think about what makes sense to you as a candidate, and it's not just about finding the next job, it's about finding a place that you can hang out for a bit, right? Call home for a bit. Because that is very important to your happiness, your stress levels, and of course your career, because the more engaged you are, the more excited you are about being where you are, the better job you're going to do, right? Do what you love.
That's interesting. One of the other pieces you mentioned earlier was, are you at the right level, or is it going to be a stretch? Certainly, if you're an experienced, a lot of the people in the SVPMA are at a particular point in their career. They're experienced in trying to figure out how to make that leap to the next level of their career. How is it from the hiring perspective when you're weighing and evaluating this individual? Take an extreme example. I would like to be a VP of products. I'm actually not sure that's true, but let's pretend, right? Being able to make that leap credibly, how do you and your organizations look at that when someone's coming in that, hey, they don't have a VP level role in the past? Is it forget about it, or introspection on what actually the role maybe didn't have the title? How do you think about those things?
So right now, in my current position, I'm lucky. I can run a gamut. If you can come in and impress, and you're presentable, and you know your stuff up and down, you can literally pretty much write your own ticket. Also very lucky with the educational factor. If you can do the job and you didn't get a formal, engineering degree, that's cool too. I'm very lucky right now where companies I've worked in the past have a lot of a set of certain people that they've hired. The company where I'm at has every color, flavor, old, young. It's pretty awesome because then I can hire a lot of different types of people. It's very, very, very diverse, very open to loudmouth Italians. We have crazy Nicaraguan recruiters. We have, it makes it's nice, and so that.
There's a bit of a balance. On the one hand, you're fighting against all the other best Olympians, but on the other hand, because competition for talent is fierce, if you have that domain or that depth of experience, then actually, the detriment of a particular educational background might not hamper it.
But in my previous role, previous company, it had to be education, the school, very specifically. We wanted people from certain schools, try to recruit them while they're young, get them in as interns, groom them, try and keep them engaged with us. My current environment, completely different, a lot more flexible in that way.
Well, maybe that would be a good place to talk a little bit about just hiring as a whole, how you were seeing this process work. So, for example, you were talking about like Facebook, and there's 4 levels. I can contrast. I'm at Amazon. You pretty much as soon as I got hired, they immediately insisted I go through training on how to interview, so making great hiring decisions. And what I saw in the interview process, certainly I can see now where it came from the training. So very focused on the culture and the principles, so Amazon's 12 leadership principles. And so every interviewer is essentially questioning you around 2 of these principles. Very fast on the turnaround as well. You have a phone screen, you come in, you do an interview, you find out like in between 2 and 5 days if it's a yay or a nay. And from the decision process, not a lot of, maybe, well, let's see who the next one. It's like literally sort of Caesar says live or die. Everyone says like a yay, the offer goes out. It's not a, yeah, but let's wait. How does that compare with, either what you've seen at your current organization or other organizations from your peers?
So our interview process at Human Aid, just quick heads up, I mean, I'm a Series A company with about 35 employees. So, we're based in San Mateo, so we're able to move like lightning speed, right? So, one of my biggest challenges, and I'll get to your answer, but one of my biggest challenges was ensuring that everyone knew how to interview properly, right? Everyone knew what we were interviewing for. Everyone knew that what we were interviewing for and ensuring that it was a wow experience throughout the whole way. So I've instituted a pre-brief prior to any candidate coming in, ensuring that a hiring manager is able to talk to the interviewers and everyone kind of is dialed in as far as what their focus is. And then of course we have checkpoints through the interview day, right? So typically for an engineer, if pair programming is not panning out, well, we're just gonna have to let you know, right? But as far as decision goes, I mean, we do a debrief right after, right? By the end of the day or the next morning. So we're making decisions very quickly, right? So
I'm actually curious out of the audience. How many of you as product managers or aspiring product managers have actually been through formal interview training, either at work or in your own time, like how to interview? Okay, so 30% or so. For the rest of you, highly recommend it, for a variety of reasons. If you haven't read, like, was it Cracking the PM Interview? There's a certain class of interview style that's talked about in there. I actually found I learned more about how to refine my process as an interviewer than as an interviewee. So it might be something to help inform your search as well. So Tom, how do you see the hiring process changing between your role now and in the past and your peers?
So, just speaking for Symantec, what's that?
I didn't talk about the past, but I'm just sharing the current.
Okay, I was not making sure he wasn't making a crack. All right, we're good. All right. So Symantec's interview process is pretty traditional, which I'm a fan of tradition, right? You have a phone screen in the beginning. You establish interest on both sides of the table, right? So there has to be some, even when somebody applies, you have to talk to the person to make sure there's interest. It could apply to something and then they just are not really interested once you kind of get into the nuts and bolts. So you have that initial talk, and oftentimes if it's a technical position or a technical phone interview, all of this happens within a couple days. I mean, we're talking about initial conversation, submission to the hiring manager, manager goes yes, then a day or 3 business days, right? Or we're phone interviewing the person. On-sites usually happen a week later, right? And sometimes there's a second on-site with more senior people. In general, if everything works out, meaning we have an open position, that's of course required, right? We have an open position and an engaged hiring manager, which we have a lot of very engaged hiring managers. You can do end-to-end within 3 to 4, sometimes 5 weeks. But if we just can't find the right talent, the process can take longer. But pretty engaged hiring managers and pretty robust hiring process. I've seen it in other companies that I've worked for where the hiring process can get mired because, for example, everybody and their brother has to approve the offer, right? So you kind of get to that end, they want to hire you, but then it goes through finance again. So the bigger, massive companies tend to have a bit more structure around finance and headcount, and so that's where things can delay. And you as a candidate may have heard about a verbal offer coming, and 3 weeks later you're still waiting, and it gets very frustrating. So having those good connection points with the recruiter is very important. But it's just the reality of sometimes bigger companies versus smaller companies. Lightning fast, somewhere in the middle, big companies might take a little longer.
So I wanted to ask Tom, sorry, since we're here.
You can co-interview, it makes my job much easier.
No, I think it'll help everyone in the audience. As far as comp goes and tiptoeing around, what are you telling your recruiters, how are you telling your recruiters to handle it, or are you just leaving it alone?
What, as far as negotiation?
No, asking about comp in phone screen.
Ah, okay, yeah. So, you know, everybody knows the law, right? We're not allowed to ask you what you're making at your last company, and that applies, by the way, don't let anybody tell you differently. That applies to everything compensation-wise. They can't ask you how much stock you had, they can't ask you what your bonus plan was, they can't ask you what the base was, so compensation's off limits. But I still ask
By the
not
way,
what
some
you made, not what you made.
confused about that, by the way. I literally had to have a conversation with the recruiter talking to me, and they're like, "Oh, so what were you making?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's like January 2nd, so you can't ask me that anymore."
No, so we're gonna talk about this now. So, but I'm gonna let Tom, because thinking Tom's my manager, imagine him trying to tell me what to do.
She was unmanageable, but if I just let her go and do what she needed to do, somehow the hires came in, so
Lots of them.
We're recording this, you know. I mean, I don't want this to be evidence in the trial.
Okay, so generally what we do, you're looking at me, it's like nerve-wracking. Generally what we do is you just say, hey, what are your salary expectations, right? Somebody will say, hey, I want to make $100,000 a year. I would say, great, how'd you get to that number? And I'll say, you know, I want to make this because I feel it's a, or they might offer what they're making at their previous company, that's fine, right? But what are you looking to make and how did you arrive at that number? And that will generate a lot of great conversation. And sometimes it's about industry, you know, what the person perceives the industry. Maybe they've looked on salary.com or some other tool out there to get some information. But if the person is good and maybe they're coming in at a level that's significantly higher than we probably have budgeted, we'll still bring them in, usually, because maybe they're a good fit for this position. We'll be very open and honest with them that, yeah, you're probably coming in hotter than we are able to pay for this position, but would you still be willing to come in and have a conversation with us? Because, gosh, your background's amazing, and maybe we can work something out now or down the road, right? So we'll bring them in anyways.
So I'll tell you guys that are looking for jobs, not trusting your recruiter and giving up the comp, that is having to ask for it, is working against you. One, okay, if you're getting underpaid, I had a conversation with a candidate today. This is how I get into trouble at work.
It will, so, you know, like, you know, choose your words carefully.
Sorry, Facebook, just kidding.
In the past, I've had
Blacklist
candidates share their comp information, and I just told them flat out, look, you're completely underpaid, you've been underpaid, please do not share with the hiring manager or anyone else. Don't you repeat that I told you to do this, but if anyone says, you know, what do you want to make, just say, I'll take what the budget is for the role. Or what did the previous person make? Or, I mean, you can play the ping pong ball game with someone to get them to give up a number, but with a recruiter, like usually a good recruiter, I think will look to make a long-term match and pay you fairly, and also do their job and stay within budget, but knowing kind of where to start and if we're close or what I'd have to do to make up for it. Okay, so maybe I'll pay you just a match, I won't get you more money, but I can probably get you more RSUs, put a senior in front of that title, you know, but work with us, with candidates, like kind of a whole speech of, look, I'm not paid on commission, I don't get a bonus, I'm gonna hire a lot of people one way or another, you can be one of them, you gotta work with me. Keeping your numbers for me is just gonna make the process more difficult in the end. So that I know your expectations, I know we can meet them, you know, I'll do my best to get you more, because I want to see you in the office every day smiling. Because I made you a good offer, and if I've ever made you an offer, you will know that I all the time.
That was a very good pitch. I do like that, but interesting to
She
hear
has
some
to
of
do
the,
jazz hands.
good to hear though some of the tension and the dynamic in that, as well as some of the Columbo tricks that Tom over here will use in order. Just one more question. Just to go back a little bit, before you get to the offer, one of the things I've seen as a trend now is more focus on a little bit of homework as part of the interview process. So,
What do you mean by home?
for example, you've got a future in sales. So one of the things, for example, Amazon asked me was, we're going to give you 2 questions, 2 topics. Pick one of them, write about 2 to 3 pages on it. And it was very open-ended. It was like, what's the most inventive thing that you have worked on, right? And why was it? 2 pages, 3 pages, off you go. And part of this is a reflection of their values, right? Their culture is, if you've read anything about them, they're very focused, and I'm still in that point where it's them or we, I'm kind of schizophrenic. Very focused culturally on writing and the value of writing and concise communications. And so this is, a barrier. It's a test as well. But I've heard things that are more or less intensive than that. Are you seeing that as a trend? Is this people just following the crowd and deciding to do it, or are they doing it with intent? Is it free consulting?
So I.
there's knowing laughs over there.
No, I mean, so we're hiring for a product marketing leader, and in that role, we have a take-home project, and we expect, so after a phone interview, we have a project, and then we would want them to come back and present to the interview panel, and then we kind of break it off into one-on-ones. But besides that, I mean, we don't have any other projects or any other role,
So,
Depends on the role.
yes, so my feeling of that, depending on what kind of project it is, it's like it gets kind of tricky, but
Yeah, I guess you're right. So I didn't answer that part of the question. I guess we do try to find something that's relevant to what we are doing.
okay, so,
Yes, so.
But you're a startup. You're not doing this for free labor because there's only 35 of you, right?
Right. No, I'm just saying for the interview. I mean, we're looking for this person to be strategic. So love for them to evaluate something and provide their insight.
so we do that for our design team. And so, but because of, in the interest of putting people to work for free, yada, 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 we have our candidates do a design redesign a Tesla dashboard, which has nothing to do with our products. But we want to see the creative process from end to end and demonstrate your creativity, your work, what you come up with. So we make it something that's, to show us the thought process and so forth, but not something that we can take and go, yeah, free work.
But how rigorous, I'm curious how rigorous the review of that ends up being as well after the fact.
Pretty darn rigorous, because you're going to sit and you're going to present, and what's really nice is it's being part of the creative process, how you take the critique, how you respond to why you made certain choices. It all leads up to kind of them deciding if you're going to be a good fit for the team.
So I'm just curious out of the audience, how many of you have been sort of through an interview process where you're dealing with, hey, go and do this homework? How many felt that was a reasonable ask? How many felt that was like an onerous ask? I'm just curious, what was an onerous ask? Maybe back there.
Yeah, I was asked to put together a product roadmap for the company, which literally would, and I asked actually the CEO gave it to me, put together the roadmap for my business for the next 3 years.
Put together a roadmap for my business for the next 3 years. And was this a domain that you were familiar with already?
Not, no.
Okay.
So it was literally, and I asked him if I could contact his team to get some more information, so no.
Couldn't contact the team for more information either. And a big company, small company?
Small company.
Small company. Oh, I'm curious how you would view that kind of request from a recruiting side. It's a bit insane. Yeah. Okay. I mean, personally, as a product
It's
manager,
not happening on my watch.
Yeah.
I wanna make sure it's.
and maybe that's actually something as well for as you're interviewing. Personally, one of the things I'm always looking for in interviewing is warning signs.
My question is, did they have a recruiter on site?
No.
Yeah.
No recruiter on site.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
Well, and some of it is, do they know what a product manager is, right?
Do they know people get paid?
I joke a lot, but that's not a joke, right? Literally, they don't necessarily understand. Their VC or someone has told them they need to put together a roadmap. They have an investment, presentation coming up, and they need to have one. And to be fair, another company that we've discussed in this was asking for certain design, thinking and review around a particular project, and I kind of asked, and it was a live conversation. It's like, oh, we've decided that we're going to do X, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Well, tell us how you would design and product manage X. Like, off you go. I was like, that's interesting. So why have you decided that you want to go down this path? Oh, you don't really need to know that. Okay, so who is this important to? Oh, it doesn't really matter. Just like off you go. And it was kind of very much like, off you go now, product manage. So I certainly took that as a certain signal of like how it was viewed. Was there another horror story? Because we're all here to sort of, well, take over there.
So that happened to the friend of mine. A few years ago, product manager had interview with Uber, and they gave him this major business case to come up with all sorts of ideas, and he was given a week or two. And he said, sure, I do it, but you need to sign NDA that if you use my ideas, you cannot use my ideas without my, if I don't get hired.
Yeah.
And you can guess that they didn't accept it.
I have seen, so that they were asking for real work, and he basically said, go ahead and I'll have ownership if you use it. Right. I have seen the reverse, which is if you know WordPress, Matt Mullenweg, fairly famous that they're a almost entirely virtual organization, and as an entirely virtual and remote organization, they have to have a fairly high bar for when they hire. One of the things that they do is they call them auditions. If you go and look for WordPress and auditions, you'll find a Harvard Business Review coverage of this. And they ask you to do real work with a caveat. So they basically say, here's something it'll take you two to 3 weeks to do. We're going to pair you with someone from the company, so you're not going to be out there flying solo. You don't need to leave your job in order to do this. You can do this in your spare time, and we'll pay you. So they invest the effort in identifying a very small project that is somewhat reflective of the work you'll do, see how you will integrate with the team, see how you work remotely, right? Everyone says they want to work remote. Some people suddenly discover that, hey, they don't really like Slack or whatever. And so that's a different take on the whole process. Okay, so Tom, did you have any thoughts on the semantic or any others? Ask for homework, or if so, what for us?
So oftentimes if we have somebody who's coming in at a very senior engineering level, perhaps they're a PhD, we'll have them do a presentation on their PhD just to talk a little bit about their thought process and kind of redefending their PhD, but in a corporate environment. And then there'll be questions and such. But outside of Symantec, I've actually experienced a couple organizations when I was interviewing for different companies where they bring you back and have you go through a real world situation where you sit in a room as if you were in the role that you're being interviewed for. And then they would come to you with real problems that they experience, hypothetical of course, for purposes of those situations. And then they'd say, how do you handle those situations? And these are not specific to the company, it's more how would you handle it. Like they might come in with a discrimination claim, or they might come in with a, somebody's getting a counteroffer from XYZ company, and they haven't even finished our interview process. How do what do we do?
And these are typically like managerial.
They're like director level interviews that were coming, that I was talking to these different companies about. It was actually pretty cool because you got to show, here's how I would handle it, and talk to the person, and they try their best to be a good actor or actress, right, and deal with you. But it was very cool because it was trying to mimic a real world situation, just to get an idea of how you would operate. Now, it's all hypothetical and it's all in a nice little bubble, but it was kind of a cool way of.
So I've heard the same thing. A friend of mine was looking at moving up in Ericsson to a head of innovation role, and I described my imagination of what a situation, an interview situation would look like that. And he said, "Oh, I went through one of those." So Korn Ferry arranged that, and so he was basically given a packet of information to brief him on the role. He went in for 2 days, I think, in an office, and they basically said, "Oh, here's your email. You have to have a business case by the end of the day. You've got to, you'll be getting email throughout the day. Oh, by the way, here's your subordinate. Did we mention that he just sexually harassed someone? Oh, and by the way, did we mention you're a woman as well? He's not, and off you go." And it was basically this two-day gauntlet to sort of exercise. That seems to be more of a managerial thing. That's probably maybe an extreme, so a high-level role. Similar things at the lower level?
For entry level to the PhD, thing, but also there have been times where I've been in situations where entry level engineers will be brought in and they'll be actually asked to have more of a panel discussion. So you get like 3 to 4 very senior level engineers will talk to them about some of the work they did, maybe some of the coursework they did or some of the project work they did, and talk to them about why they made certain decisions and ask them to sort of explain. So it's not homework per se, but it's more of trying to really understand how the person acts in nature, as opposed to like a HackerRank where you're just testing your coding skills. I mean, there's value to tools like HackerRank and other technology, but companies are more trying to understand, when I hire you or you or you, and you come and work for me, or us, and you become part of the team, how are you going to operate when the shit hits the fan? And it always hits the fan. It really, how is that going to be? When the stress level goes up and people are running around with their hair on fire, how are you going to take care of the situation? So think about that as you're going through your interview process, that this is this wonderful, warm little bubble, right? That you're just having this conversation with this person, and then at the end of it, you may or may not get a job offer. Do you really understand, and does the company really understand how you're going to react or how things are going to be when you're there? Right?
The old, are you going to rise to the occasion? The truth is, people don't rise to the occasion. They don't improve on their base level. They actually revert back to, and that's why you see, special forces. The motto, I think, of the British forces is, train hard, fight easy, because basically, when the shit hits the fan, it's not going to be suddenly you pull in these inner reserves and outperform whatever you did in the past. It's actually you're going to
go back to your base,
your
base nature. And so understanding yourself and how you operate and whether the company you're interviewing for meshes with who you are as a professional. And there's, just like there's every type of person in this room, there's every type of company out there. And finding that match for you is very, very important.
How do you get that out early in the process? So this might be at like round 2 interview, but how do you get that out in like a resume or like a...
So, and I'll let Olga speak because I can see you chomping at the bit. Just really quickly to answer your question. What I always ask the managers, tell me what keeps you up at night. What are the things you worry about? What are the things that when things go south, tell me about those moments, right? And ask them, you want to get people off their guard. You want to get people to the point where they're actually having a conversation with you. And that's from an interviewer perspective, but also as a candidate. When you're having a conversation and you can say to this person, dude, tell me, I'm thinking about making a pretty major change here. I'm really excited about this role, but I just want to make sure it's going to be right for me and right for you. Tell me, when things go south, what does it look like? Right? Because it always goes south somewhere, right? Somebody's going to have a problem that you're going to have to solve, or somebody's going to be sexually harassing somebody over there, and you got to deal with that, right? I was not meaning to put my hand over your knee. I'm so sorry, that was unintentional.
Good night, everyone.
but you see where I'm going, is you want to get, and that's hard to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, just ask them about their kids and suddenly you're having a great conversation. But it's just getting down to the meat of the matter is very important.
So as a recruiter, I try to make candidates feel very comfortable, and I'm usually pretty good at getting people bam right off their guard. But then I have to refocus them because then they get all the secrecy and kind of they still have to be kind of serious. But I often give the advice that yes, having a conversation, getting to the conversation, asking the hiring manager, so how is my role? What can I do when I come in my role to help you? What are the areas that you see that I'm going to be able to pick up? You know, get them talking about their job, the hiring manager. What's your struggle? So how's this role going to help you address that? And you very quickly be able to start people just start talking. You ask them the right questions and getting to that conversation. People I think hire people that they like and they trust. And getting to that, you got to cut past the let's go through your resume, let's go through that. You can get to the conversation and be feeling like a normal person.
And don't ignore the red flags. So many times you're going through an interview and you're like, ding, 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 ding. No, no, they're not going to be that way. Yeah, they are.
Yes,
Right?
they are.
Don't ignore the red flag. Don't just go, oh, red flag, no. But probe. Go down this road. Somebody says something, well, I'm very diligent. I want to make sure that every one of my direct reports, since we report every Friday of all the stuff that they did, blah, 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 blah. And you might think, okay, great, that's great. I've done reports before. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Am I really every Friday at 4:30 going to have to write a detailed report of every phone call that I did? Really? And I had a manager like that once, way back. And I literally every Friday at 4:30 I had to write a report, and it was crazy. I didn't pay attention to the interview. And suddenly I'm in a kind of weird, like, this is not what I want to be doing situation.
So I'm curious, Pramod, maybe on that point, where are the big, I'll call them impedance mismatches right now that you're seeing, between the checklist of what the manager wants, the spoken and unspoken things they actually need, and the ability for candidates to meet those, or to be able to communicate their ability to meet those. What are the big gaps right now that are causing the friction in people finding the talent they need and finding the job they want?
And our biggest challenge is our responsibilities are lines in the sand, right? So the ability to be flexible, not just kind of sideways, but up and down is super critical. I do find that, right now I'm hiring a data tech lead, and you look at existing tech leads and they're pretty hands off, or they're very tied into the architecture, but they're not contributing code. Well, this is a role that contributes code. So I think, my biggest challenge is just finding people that understand that in a startup it's very fluid, and you're pretty much doing a lot of things that are not typically part of your requirements, right? And so, which parlays or segues into the fact that when we interview folks, we want to make sure that they understand our domain, that they understand what we're doing, that we're passionate about the space, right? But yeah, that's been a big challenge. I have to say that's the majority of the challenge, is finding someone who can operate well in our environment.
All right, so for startup, obviously, being able to zoom in, zoom out, and be sort of lateral,
and I tend to set those expectations up front, right? Kind of give a sense of what they might love. But in the end, after the interviews are done, they come to realize that it's not so.
Other perspectives on where these are ships passing in the night, that for one reason or another?
What's driving me nuts right now is people apply, and the next day, after I've scheduled them with the team, after I've phone screened them, I got an offer, gotta go, bye. Like 3 times a week, every week, for weeks now. It's insane.
So is that a byproduct of the pace right now? Is that I'm not quite sure if I've gotten this other role, and so I'm keeping because I think as a candidate, right, the problem is you can't sort of, oh, I had a great interview, you just got to keep this pipeline going.
And people are doing that, and they're coming with multiple offers. They're not even coming in because they got an offer, and so they have those initial initial conversations. How's your job search going? Are you close to an offer?
And the candidate version, actually, this was something I was chatting with someone about, which was, you know, they were getting all the way through the process and then not getting across the line. It happened a number of times. They weren't clear why it was, and from my read, there didn't seem to be any reason. One of the things that I asked was, okay, so how confident were you that there was alignment on what the role was, right? Your read of the various interviewers, were they all saying the same things? Did they know what a product manager was? Did they all agree? Did they agree on what the problems were that the organization, you know, needed to solve? And of course, you've got to get all this in your, hey, we've got 2 minutes left in the interview. Any questions for me? And then the other one that was very important was trying to find a very subtle way to basically ask how far along the company was in their hiring process. Am I first? Have you been interviewing for a long period of time and maybe you've already got a candidate and I'm the backup? Just to sort of be able to sort of temper your expectations, which is the other side of that. Mismatches, where people are totally missing each other on what the company needs and what they're able to provide, that are leading to lots of angst. Heavy drinking?
Yes, but I would say that at a lot of companies. What's that? What are you doing? You're messing up the panel, dude. Don't let me hang. You're good. All right.
Usually
Sorry,
Tom
folks.
is drawing things. He's explaining.
Yes, there are often times when the interview goes from where you have a mismatch between what the manager and the people in the interview team are looking for, and maybe they're not all aligned. And so at the end of the process, and I think what you're getting at is that some people are saying yes, some people are saying no, because everybody has a slightly different understanding about what the role is. And so you get a person who matches maybe what the hiring manager wants exactly, but because not everybody in the interview team is aligned with that understanding, that person doesn't get the offer. And it's a crying shame because they're the perfect fit, but 2 or 3 people on the team don't know it. So it behooves you as a candidate to actually have a very in-depth conversation with the recruiter and the hiring manager before you actually go through the process. Oftentimes the hiring manager will be on the phone and doing the phone screen and just really clearly understanding what the role is, and you know, without trying to preach to the recruiter, just saying, great, I'm really excited, the manager really explained the role to me. Can you tell me what each of the people in the interview team are going to be talking to me about? I'd love to understand why they're including the director of sales, just to understand kind of where they're going to be coming from. And the recruiter oftentimes will go, oh, I mean, won't say that to you, but they'll be thinking that, I don't know, right? And so then they'll go back and they'll ask the hiring manager, hey, why is Susan, the director of sales, interviewing this person? And oh, I want their perspective on this. Oh, okay. Hey, Susan, just want to make sure this is what, you know, so it kind of helps to circulate people having communication. It's sort of a backwards way of the candidate actually getting them to do the right thing. But if the recruiter and if the manager and if the organization is organized, everybody should know where you are. If it's a smaller company, not all of them, probably very organized where you are, but I'm just saying oftentimes smaller companies don't have as much organization and rigor around the interviewers and helping them to understand what they're each there for and what feedback they're there to provide. And so, but the bigger companies often have a better handle on it. It's a gross generalization, but there it is.
So I've been asking a lot of questions. I've been asking some that have come to me through Twitter and from the ethosphere. I do want to open it up a little bit more in case some of you are shy about Twitter and really want to ask in front of an audience. So, back there?
Quick question. Do you have hard data to support what style of interview is actually effective? Because it seems like every, as time goes by, and Google has its own way, Amazon has its own, they go from behavioral to technical, all those kind of things. But do you, as HR, keep hard data that when we do this type of interview, the people we hire actually were good, or vice versa? Or they're just like, just as the hairstyle changes, the interview style changes as
So
well.
to paraphrase, are you guys just making it up?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be polite to these guys.
That's okay, I don't have to do that.
Okay, so there is actually a lot of hard data out there, but the adoption rate for companies to actually go forward with the hard data compared to what they feel is the right answer, there's not a commonly held understanding as to what is the right hard data. There's a lot of really great books out there that talk about really effective interviewing technique. One of them I like a lot is a book called Who by Randy Street and Jeffrey Smart, Jeffrey spelled with a G. It's a really cool book that kind of gives you some fundamentals in interviewing and is very effective. We used it at SanDisk, and it was really helpful for us to organize our interviewing process. And they have a lot of data behind the recommendations they're making. Now, that's one book, that's one methodology. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of other hard data and methodologies out there that are somewhat similar. Some of them are way out in different area and they're completely different than anything you've ever thought of. So yeah, there is, but the adoption rate again is not consistent, so you're not going to see that consistently repeated at different companies.
So I've worked at a few different companies, and it varies differently, different groups. I know Intuit follows this STARS methodology where it's very competency based, and interviewers have interview questions given to them. They know how to assess it. And then on the other side of the spectrum is a very lightweight interview process that I implemented, or that we have, right? But when I first join a company, my first question to the team is, what has worked for you? What hasn't worked? I'm very open to trying what they've got and then tweaking it. And everything's about measuring, iterating, and improving, right? But it varies. I mean, the data for me is, hey, did we successfully hire someone that is kicking ass, right? So if we've used that process to hire someone and it's resulted in them not being there, then we got to look at that. Right? So that's kind of at least the data I look at. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, kind of. Basically, if you hire 10 people, let's say,
Yeah.
and after a year you look at those 10 people and say, you know what, 9 of them perform real well, and that was the method of interview we used, or the vice versa. You know what, use this for 5 of them, use that for the other 5. The first group, 4 out of 5 are gone, they're really bad, but the other one, 5 out of 5, stuff like that to see actually.
So we've done, you're actually getting to something very interesting called quality of hire.
Right.
And quality of hire is something we measured very extensively at SanDisk when we did this exact methodology we're talking about. What we did is we looked at, it was a combination of immediately out the gate when a person gets hired, we do a manager survey, hey, how was your process? We do a candidate survey, hey, how was your process? Then we would wait 3 months. We do the same, a different flavored survey, like, hey, is the job you were hired into the job you're doing now? And hey, was the candidate you hired and the expectations you had of that candidate, right, meeting what you're actually getting now? And then we do it again at 6 months. And then the ultimate goal was, and I left before we were able to see the results of that, was to tie it to performance management, because then you get to see their rating compared to the different. But we actually saw a significant uptick in quality of hire just in those initial 3 batches, right? The initial, the 3 months and the 6 months, where we were seeing manager satisfaction going up and the candidate alignment to the job improving, because it's funny, it's the moment you start measuring something, people start focusing on actually achieving the measurement. Right?
Well, and that was, what you were kind of describing, oh, maybe we'll do it, 5 candidates this way. So Google did this. So they did a massive project. Laszlo Bock, who used to be the VP of people, he read the book, Work Rules, they talked all about it. And so essentially, A/B testing on their process. Their perspective is there's 50 years of research around this. The problem is no one seems to apply it as rigorously as necessary to get the results. They did. The part that was probably the funniest out of the whole process was they did some of this initial quality of hire, right? And they were, how good do you think this person that you're hiring will be? And then they came back and how good were they? They did it across the entire company. And everyone sucked, except for one guy. And that one guy was the top, world-leading researcher in a very, very narrow field. And he was really, really good at predicting his hires in his really, really narrow field. Right? right? So it's hard. Other questions? I'll bounce back and forth. Alex?
Yeah, question might be for the larger companies you've had experience in, but my perception and theory is that trying to go through applying to open jobs and running through the candidate management systems is a low probability approach that may not even be worth doing, but getting names, meeting people, talking to people is really the invest.
For me, because I worked for him, I'm very diligent about keeping my recs clean, to getting back to if there's someone good in the system, I would be a fool not to be calling them within moments. Right now in my position, I am launching an applicant tracking system. There's no way for me to track anybody who's been interviewed at the company before. It's been kind of a nightmare of, this guy looks great, we talked to him last year. How about this one? Talk to him last year. It stinks, but with that said, no, I at least look through my recs every day, and if there's someone good in there, I'm shooting them an email, sending them a text message saying, hey, I'm Olga, you applied for my job, when do you want to talk?
But that's you. That is you. That's like all, like, she's amazing. She's an amazing recruiter. And that's why I hired her, and that's why I would hire her again. She's just really good at what she does. Not everybody's like that, right? Not everybody is as diligent, and oftentimes you go into the candidate applicant tracking system, and it really is a black hole. It just sort of, you can see your resume disappearing into the dark. You know, like Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. It's like, oh. But
So depending
what
on
was it? That you like that? You like that movie? I didn't like that movie. There was room for both of them on that damn door. There was. She let him go.
Focus, Tom.
He died.
Bring it back. Bring it back.
Sorry. Anyway. But to answer your question, sir, was your name Alex?
Yeah.
It's awesome. I remember. I'm not good with names, by the way, so Alex good. So to answer your question, I agree that you have to be able to get multiple touch points. You can't just apply to this system, right? And talking to people, you are absolutely correct. And networking is great, but you may or may not be talking to the people at the company you want to work for when you go networking. So that's when you go to your network, right? And you start reaching out to the people who are at that company to see if they can tell a positive story about you. Another cool thing that I've been thinking of, and I was chatting about it earlier, there's just a lot of new companies that are developing technology in talent acquisition right now. There's companies that are doing assessment tools. There are companies that are doing some cool stuff in video interviewing. And a lot of companies these days are trying to be relevant, right? These companies the size of Symantec or larger or smaller, they're trying to be relevant and be on board for the next big LinkedIn, right? Because LinkedIn came out of nowhere and suddenly it's like the gold standard for recruiting. What's the next LinkedIn? So a lot of companies are investing in these smaller startup-y type companies, and they're not getting a lot of candidate flow yet because they're still small. But when you go through one of these methods, guess what? You're one of 10 people that actually did it. So now you are being seen. But if you go through the other method where you just apply to the LinkedIn job, you're one of 1,500, right? So I'm not saying it's an end-all, be-all, save-all method to getting a job, but start diversifying your search. Don't go for a one-size-fits-all approach. Reach out to your networks. See who's working at the company who can speak for you, right? Don't just reach to your neighbor that happens to work with you. That's okay, but the more powerful message is, I worked with Alex at this company. He was great. Really enjoyed my time working with him. He was smart, diligent, always got back to me, and then that person's message weighs something to the manager who's considering your application.
Don't underestimate, frankly, the power of serendipity. One of the most disappointing things I see being part of the SVPMA is we see people float in and float out, and they usually float in when? Any guesses?
When you need a job.
When they need a job, and then we never freaking see them again until when? They need a job. This is not a very constructive way to build your network. And don't get me wrong, if you're coming because, welcome, we hope you come again, we hope you come again and again and again is more the point, because you really just don't know when you're going to be able to activate that network and have it turn around. I'll give you a very simple example. The job I have right now, right? I had a buddy in Vancouver who I graduated with 25 years ago, who had someone from Amazon reach out to him. And he's like running a small startup and he's got 20 employees. And I said, hey, why don't you come work for us? And he said, kind of busy. Brendan's available, go talk to him. And this is a guy that maybe I'm in contact with once a year, right? Last time we saw each other physically face to face was a decade ago. And was how my in was to Amazon. That's freakish, and it's frustrating, I think, as someone who's looking for a role, like, really, that's what I'm gonna be relying on? The point is, you need to think about yourself basically as a farmer. You're planting lots of seeds, and who knows, you may get to harvest something here, there, or lots of little bets. It's not a lot of effort, but it's just a habit that you have to build.
So I want to add a little LinkedIn tip. LinkedIn's a mafia, by the way. I think they're evil. They charge candidates, they charge recruiters, they charge job postings. They are slicing it every which way, but it's becoming less effective for recruiters on a daily basis.
And why is that?
Because people are getting bombarded by email and spamming recruiters.
Has anyone, I'm curious, has anyone had success through an outreach from an email or vice versa, applying?
It's becoming less and less helpful. Initially, it used to be the response rate was higher. These days it's going down.
I have a personal theory, which is, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I have had a good success rate, but not in looking for jobs, but in looking for connections that are, meaningful. So that has been very successful, but I haven't really tried to look for jobs.
And back here?
Yeah, it's becoming less and less relevant. Even the search alerts that come back, you have your positions, you have your designations, you have the kind of locations you're looking for. What comes back isn't relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, you would imagine in this time and age when we're talking of AI, we're talking of data all the time, we're talking of simple filters. It's not. I mean,
And some of it's an incentive problem, actually. It's an incentive problem. If you look at it, a simple example is your realtor, the realtor that works for you, right? That's going to sell your home. Their incentive is to get the most money for your house, right? Wrong. The incentive for them is to get as much as they can as quickly as they can and move on, not to hold out. I think LinkedIn has a similar problem, which is, and I've literally talked to people who work there in the AI piece, and you're seeing search results for recruiters that are essentially not, here's the best candidates for this role, but here's the best candidates that have a likelihood of accepting or matching with you.
It's ridiculous. And then you pay to be on that list, and they're taking advantage of that too.
So is LinkedIn a sponsor?
No.
So I was going to give something that I do as a recruiter. When I get a candidate that's on my list, looks really good, I go and look and see who that person recommends, who's recommending that person. Writing recommendations is a really sneaky way of getting your name on someone's page, for example, that you might normally be associated with, but you know that someone over there does a great job and they're getting hit up by recruiters all the time. Yeah, write them a nice little recommendation. Am I sneaky? Am I good? Am I good?
That's really good. I like that.
No, I'm really good. I know LinkedIn.
Well, and that actually, we had Harry, who's the director of product management from LinkedIn, speaking a couple of months ago. And certainly one of the things, recommendations, that's certainly one, the endorsements. The other thing that I always point to people is, you're a product manager. If you've been a product manager for a certain amount of time, you know that part of the trick of the job is meeting people halfway and making it easy for them to make a decision or to take an action, right? You do it if you're a consumer-facing PM who's trying to get someone to, click that link. If you're an enterprise PM, you're trying to do it internally through your sales team, through their enablement. You should be doing the same thing when it comes to your recommendations. You know why I get recommendations that are awesome and they're spell checked?
You write them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, people are lazy. But people want to be helpful, and they want to be liked. And if you write, look, you're not going to, lie. You're not going to be hyperbolic and say something, but you're going to be, I did this, and it was wonderful, and blah, blah, blah. And chances are they will say, yeah, totally. They might tweak it. By and large, they'll go, yep. So think about it.
And then you get more eyeballs back to your profile.
Yeah, well, I agree with her, but I find it almost a little dishonest to be ghostwriting your own recommendations. I recommend giving a few ideas to the person, but I actually put a little more cred onto a recommendation that has a little grammar imperfection or something that.
But you can do that too.
Yes. I might pull that recommendation.
I'm just saying that there is someone who is ghostwriting tweets out there that has got an algorithm, putting the right imperfections in all caps in places for certain individuals. Moving swiftly along. See, was it more?
Oh, I'm gonna be going and talking to that person who has that recommendation on your profile. They can't regurgitate pretty closely when you wrote. I want to know where it came from.
It's a fair point. You're assuming they're still alive or real.
Can I give a couple LinkedIn hacks? There's a couple LinkedIn hacks that are actually really cool ones.
For me.
No, this one I know all by myself. I'm a big boy now.
Say something.
All right. Okay, so you know how LinkedIn is asking for you to pay to do in-mails to people, right? They ask you to pay, right? The way you get around that is you find the person you want to talk to, and maybe they're a second connection or whatever. See what groups they joined.
Yeah.
You join those groups, then you go into those groups and reach out to them from the group, free.
Ooh, that is.
You just have to be in the group. Now you have to get accepted in the group, and if you're sometimes the moderators won't let you in. But oftentimes there are a lot of open groups, right? Completely free. Okay?
Rumor is they may be refactoring groups, so do it while you can.
Do what you can. Second hack, figure out the first and last name of the person, figure out the company they are at, and figure out their email address. There's a couple ways to ping the server on the email address, emailverifier.com or whatever. And as long as it's not John Smith at Microsoft, where there's probably 100 of those or more, right? A unique enough name, you can try a couple variations, first initial, last name, underscore, first initial, last name, whatever.
You could use Reportive before, but that got bought by LinkedIn, which is now, I think, like their plugin for Gmail, like the Sales Navigator. I don't know if it works the
There's
same.
a lot of different ways to find email. I just send that person an email, hey, I see you have a job posted on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you. And that manager goes, oh my gosh, somebody's actually reaching out to me. And it's hugely.
Actually, I was using this in a different way. Reportive it's a plugin for Gmail, so you can essentially, you enter an email address, and you have the same thing in like Outlook where it pops up and shows you, oh, here's their LinkedIn profile. Basically the same technique, but now you've got confirmation of your email address. Why would I send them a LinkedIn email when I can just email them directly?
Yeah, ultimately, if you can do that, that's great. But here's one. So the LinkedIn job seeker accounts only gives you so many in-mails.
Like 10, I think it is.
Yeah, you could get a Recruiter Lite account. I believe it's almost the same amount last time I looked. And they don't really check, and you get a lot more in-mail. In-mail.
Wow.
Wow.
And they're more likely to open it because it appears to come from a recruiter?
No, you just get like you get an in-mail, get a message. For pretty much, I look at all my in-mails. But
I wasn't sure, because sometimes you do get the ones that say it comes from a recruiter. I don't know what level that is.
Is that you?
All right, maybe do one more. We'll sort of wrap up, and people can hang around and chat. So I'm going to go out here. You got the pitch, so. Wendy?
So, when the small startup reach out to you and then you find out, you talk to them and find out their annual salary is lower than your current pay, how do you, and even sometimes annual is lower, how do you negotiate to the level and the salary range you want to, or
We're startups, then we got what we got. It's part of our job.
Can you repeat the question?
Negotiating salaries with startup companies, when we come in lower, I mean, we have to offer you a whole bunch of other stuff to make up for it and be excited about the products and like, right? I mean, right? Yeah.
Wait, let me clarify. So, or basically, you're saying if your salary and even title is lower than what we're trying to hire for.
Yeah, I mean,
How do you?
the startup, right? The other way around, so startup will come to you,
Oh, like if you're
and
working
salary
at a
is
startup.
lower than the current. But
what's lower than what you're currently at?
It's, you know, you've been trapped by one of the big companies, and so it's like, hey, want to come and have more responsibility for less money and higher risk?
Well, we did it. I did. That's partly why I'm like a little bit of because I deal with that every day. So partly, I mean, the thing is, you know, everyone. I mean, well, to answer your question, if it's how do I get them to consider lower? It's not an easy task, and so really, again, that comes back to passion. It comes back to their level of interest in the space. My job is to very much educate them of who we are and what we're doing, and understand their aspirations and how they can make that happen. You know, I'll tell you, all of our postings, I mean, senior product marketing manager, but in reality, that role can be up-leveled to probably a senior director, right? But we tend to want to keep things reasonably flat at face value. We don't want to put all our cards out there, right? Because you know, we don't want everybody wanting a senior director. Like, we want to have some flexibility. Right?
Well, and that's back to, I think there was a question that came through earlier. It was like, hey, how do I get a VP role if I've never been a VP, if I've never had one? You know, I had a mentor who pretty much said, if you want to go and do that, you know, there's a way for you to do it. Go to a smaller company, go to a company that's struggling, right? You're basically going to, you know, eat it on you know, salary for a while, with the understanding that this is an investment in being able to show a certain level of skills, and you'll recoup that later.
But I'll be, to continue on the answer, I mean, I've had the fortune of working for different sized companies, and I don't necessarily want to work for an organization that's going to pigeonhole someone or try to put a square in a circle, I guess. I mean, you know, when I interviewed with Human API, I asked about their comp philosophy and their organizational philosophy, and it was important that they're open-minded, right? And so it all comes down to leadership, and if you're the right person for that opportunity, I mean, we'll make it work. They should, you know. Now, there's only a certain number of VPs one can have, but, you know, getting from a senior manager to a director to a senior director, I think it's doable, right? But again, but then that comes down to compensation, right? So comp ranges, we're an equity play, so be prepared, right? We're a Series A, so clearly we're going to compensate really well for a Series B company, but still very far from a Symantec, right? And so just be aware, that's all. I actually, you know, I'll tell you, I am speaking, I'll give you a great example, and it makes me feel so great that people are actually out there like this. I mean, she's currently on track to be CEO at a, you know, it's in the life insurance industry, but she clearly sees what we're doing as setting the new pace in that industry. And she's talked about humility and the ability to just understand her place in our organization, which is substantially smaller than where she's from. But the fact that she wants it, she's willing to just carry it back, right? And it's great to just hear people that are excited, right?
So again, back to that fit of vision, the culture, and sort of where the organization wants to go, the mission.
Yeah, and you know, we are hiring a VP of customer success, but the ideal candidate that we have currently now is a senior, right? And we'll up-level.
So maybe just to bring it to close, and then we can sort of break and swap LinkedIn connections.
You all got mine already, right?
Yeah. I'm kidding. So one quick question, you know, 2019 is coming, right? Prediction for the future. Is it a wonderful new tomorrow where things continue to hum along, cook along, high demand, low unemployment, wages on the rise? Is it on the cusp of an inflection point and, you know, batten down the hatches? What's your quick sense? quick sense.
Olga.
You know, I keep my, I have my head in the weeds so much, I don't watch, yeah, exactly, I have offers to make.
You know, yeah, honestly, things are going really well right now in the economy, just in general. But history is a great teacher, and history will tell us that when things go up, they tend to go down. I think it's just going to level out, just my opinion. It's going to level out for a bit. I don't think there's going to be any huge spikes anytime soon. With kind of the way things are in the U.S. It's just sort of.
All right, we'll do a quick audience poll. Everything's going awesome, and it's only going to get better next year. Hands up. Okay, a few.
Yes, 50% of the room.
That was like 3% of the room. It's going to stay about the same. We're just trucking along. Okay, that feels like a majority. Oh my God, we're all going to die. The sky's falling. Next year is going to be horrible. Yeah, a little bit more than the super optimists. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Please come out to the job fair next month. Stick around. Thanks.